Welcome to the highlight of civilization. It's called Coffee with Scott Adams because I'm Scott Adams and there will be coffee. If you'd like to take this experience up to the maximal possibility, and I'm talking whiteboard is coming kind of level, not even the normal amazingness of the live stream usually, we're actually going to take it up a whole other level. And if you'd like to be part of that, all you need is a cup or mug or glass, a tanker, chalice, stein, a canteen, jug or flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine hit of the day. It's the thing that makes everything feel better. It's called the simultaneous sip. And it happens now. Go. I felt a few of you missing the mark there. Some of you were a little slow. Next time I want you all to be on point, okay? But it was still very good. It was very good. I think you could take it up another level. There were a few of you I could sense, somebody in Iowa, 2 people in Great Britain, and 3 people in Florida who were not on time with the rest of you. I can feel that. Yeah, I can feel it. Let's talk about the news. So Kari Lake did not win in Arizona. She will not be the governor. Instead, the governor will be somebody who won a suspicious election in which she was the one in charge of counting the votes. So the person in charge of counting the votes won in a suspicious way. I'm not alleging any cheating happened. I have no evidence of any cheating whatsoever. I want to be clear about that because I'm no election denier. I'm just saying that from the outside, there might be a few questions about the delay and the way things went and the fact that the person who counted the votes won in a narrow match. Oh, what could go wrong? So here's my note to Democrats. Pretty happy about that? You're pretty happy that Kari Lake's not going to be a governor? Good luck with that. Because if you don't know what's coming for you, you're going to have a nice surprise. Kari Lake just got freed from her little state cage. You don't let the Kraken out of the state cage. If you could keep her in the governorship, you could at least keep her out of the way a little bit, right? But they just released her to the national level. It's the biggest political mistake of all time. Oops. I don't know what's going to... Was Trump allegedly going to announce today? Did that change? At 9 p.m.? All right, here's what I'm going to predict for Trump's announcement. Prediction. He will announce he's running because he's Trump. It would be insanely amazing if he decided that he would tell you instead he's going to back a different candidate. Like that would just blow your head off. And he would go into the George Washington, annals of greatest presidents. I'll even go further. If Trump decides that for the good of the country, he's not going to run, he would be our greatest president since George Washington. Maybe second greatest. Would you agree? As a prior supporter of his, who has been disappointed in a number of areas, as many of you have, if he stood down and said, for the good of the country, this doesn't work, it's not 2016, I showed you what works, I showed you what doesn't, I'm going to take myself out of the mix. Now, if you and I had this decision, could we do it? If you were in this situation, could you make that choice? With your personality, you're not Trump. Could you do it? I could do it. Yeah. I think a lot of you could do it. Do you think Trump could do it? Do you think Trump could do it? I'm going to tease you a little bit. He actually could. And do you know why he could? Because he's smart enough to know that it would cement him as the second best president of the whole fucking United States. In many people's view. In my view, that would put him ahead of Reagan. I liked Clinton as a president. I liked him a lot, actually. But it would put him ahead of Clinton, for sure. Now, that's just my view. So I can't guarantee that, he wouldn't be discredited in the history books or anything else. So I can't guarantee my view is common. But I don't expect him to do that. Do you? Does anybody expect him to do anything except announce? So let's make our prediction based on the fact that he will announce, okay? So here's my prediction within that path. If he goes that path, he's going to tease that Kari Lake could be his vice president. You won't say it because you don't say those things ahead of time, but he's going to tease it. And if he teases it, all bets are off. There's just nothing that would be the same after that. All bets are off. And here's the thing that makes Trump hard to support at the moment. There are a number of things that make him hard to support. But one of the things is we don't see a moderating influence on him. Whereas Ivanka was a moderating influence. Didn't you think so? I mean, I think she was there. I think Trump put her there not just because she was a trusted advisor, but that she was like an external conscience, right? Like the one person he would listen to. And if she disagreed with him, I think he took her seriously. And maybe not too many other people like that. So if you don't see a moderating influence on Trump, he's a little dangerous looking, isn't he? Right? You needed that little bit of just certainty that Jared and Ivanka, they'd quit, they would have resigned, I think. Imagine how embarrassing that would be. Imagine having your daughter resign because she doesn't agree with your administration, right? So Ivanka had actually a super important role for the country, not just for Trump. It was more for the country. And I don't think that'll ever be fully appreciated. Now, I'm speculating because I wasn't, I'm not behind the scenes, but it feels like it. Now, imagine Kari Lake as his vice president. I hate to say this, but she's a far better communicator than Trump. Now, he gets more energy and more attention, and that's, you could argue that puts him above. But in terms of forming a sentence that won't get you in trouble, but fully pushes your point, Kari Lake's better. One of the best we've seen, right? She's actually unique. If she were on the team and you considered her a full partner, in a way that Pence never felt like a full partner, did he? Didn't you imagine that when Pence gave advice to Trump, that Trump listened and then ignored it? I don't know. I mean, I have a very high opinion of Pence as a vice president. I think he was one of our best vice presidents. I think he was tremendous. In a really hard, difficulty job, he excelled. Like that's where you have to give him the credit. He had the hardest job in the world, and he excelled. He was great. I don't want him as president. I don't think he's quite got that vibe. But wow, you got to give him credit for service to America. But I think Kari Lake would have the credibility and the skills that Trump would respect her skill level, because he can see it, right? Everybody can see it. If he respects her skill level, he's tempted to listen to her. And especially on the election denier stuff, I believe that she could craft that into a message that actually worked in a positive way. It's easy, right? It's easy. You just say, we don't know, there's no proof of any fraud, step one, right? It's not that hard. No fraud has been proven, but the way our system runs, it doesn't give us confidence. Nobody can argue about that. Nothing's been proven, but the way our system runs, it doesn't give us confidence. That has to be fixed. So let's forget the past, but figure out how we can fix it. How hard is that? But that's something that Trump isn't going to do. Trump will never say it that way, right? But if Kari Lake says it that way, which is what the vice president does. The vice president, if you didn't know this, the vice president tests messages in a campaign. If the message works, then the top candidate says, oh yeah, that's the message. And if the message doesn't work, then the top says, well, I'll get the vice president on board. That's, vice president was talking for her himself, right? So Kari Lake is the perfect person to test a message that Trump can learn from and then adopt. Do you think Pence was that person? Do you think Pence ever said something that Trump said, ooh, that's a good way to say it? I think I'll copy Pence. Probably never. and again, I have a very high opinion of Pence. His communication skills are extraordinary. Very good, very good. But not the kind of person who necessarily is going to influence you. All right. So, that would change everything. Keep an eye on that. However, we're also in the situation where, as I tweeted earlier, that Fetterman could be any Republican in 2024. With the current setup, like if nothing changed, like it's just straight line from here to 2024, no joke, this is not a joke. Now, I don't think he'll run, obviously, but Fetterman could beat him. Why? Because all that matters is that your team wants that more than they want the other thing. That's all. And they would. If they're willing to treat Fetterman as a serious national candidate for senator, what would stop them from pretending he's presidential material? I mean, by then he would be much recovered, right? You might even be able to form sentences without a teleprompter or understand sentences. So I don't know what you do about that. I think we're all coming to the understanding that it's the mechanism of the vote that always determines who wins. And right now the mechanism, which is, sort of leaning toward ballots and voting at home and stuff, that mechanism strongly leans toward Democrats. I don't see anything that's going to change it. Do you? I don't see Republicans suggesting or doing anything that would make any difference to that. Do you? So I don't see any way that a Republican could win in 2024 with the current setup. But there will be lots that changes between now and 2024. So that's not a prediction, right? My prediction is always that everything will change. When I give you a straight line prediction, I'm telling you that's the thing that probably won't happen. Because the straight line predictions are the ones that are the most rare. It's rare that nothing happens, right? But it's interesting to know what the straight line will look like. All right, we got to talk about FTX, the big crypto exchange where that young guy was a big old multi-billionaire, and I guess he was the third biggest donor to the Democratic Party, and turns out he was stealing all the money from the clients, and it was a big old scam. And it's all falling apart. So here are the sub-stories that have come out of that. Turns out this is way more interesting than I was expecting. This has everything. Like, if you're looking for a story that has everything, oh, this has it. This has got everything. So here's just a hint of what's happening. So the New York Times does this major piece about the FTX scandal, and Twitter is just kicking their ass because they do a major story, and here are the topics which were not mentioned in a major story about FTX. Fraud, crime, substance abuse, connections with blah, 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 stolen funds, wipe servers. So the New York Times does a major story about this guy who was a gigantic Democrat donor. They treat it like it's like some ordinary business problem where he lost his money or something. Like completely losing the... So Twitter noticed and started dumping on him. But that led me to another fascinating thing. So I saw a tweet by Balaji Srinivasan. Now, I'm telling you, you need to follow him on Twitter. Right? Here's one where just listen to me. Like, don't argue. Just listen to me. Just follow Balaji Srinivasan on Twitter. Just do it, okay? I'm not even going to tell you reasons. Just do it. All right, so here's one of the things that he tweeted today, and I didn't know about this. He said, the New York Times is covering up Sam Bankman-Fried's crimes. Nothing SBF says can be trusted. Nothing the New York Times says can be trusted either. But dunking does nothing. You know, that's what the other Twitter users were doing. They were trying to dunk on the New York Times. He says, lies make traffic rise. You do have one option, though. Mass block them all in one go. And then he gives a URL that's blocknewyorktimes.com, I guess. And so there's an actual app that blocks all the employees, I think probably the writers, for the New York Times. So that you can't see anything the New York Times produces. Isn't that hilarious? Now, I'm not going to recommend that you use it. I'm not going to use it because I want to see everything. But I love the suggestion. Let me put it this way. Imagine you had a job of reporting the news. That's your job. Not only do you have a job of reporting the news, but you're considered the standard. You know, you're the news maker. You're the cream of the crop. And yet, you do your job so badly that somebody spent time to make an app to make sure nobody sees it. That actually happened. Imagine your performance review. So, how'd you do here running the New York Times? Well, so poorly that I'm the only news entity in the world that somebody had to build an app to avoid accidental exposure to it. The app lets you avoid accidental exposure to the New York Times because it's so dangerous. And none of that's wrong. None of it's wrong. Right? That's an actual app. It's a real app. People are actually using it. And it does exactly what it says. It prevents you from seeing fake news. I mean, just sort of sit here for a moment and just process that. It's the New York Times, and somebody made an app to prevent you seeing it so that you'd be protected from fake news, and that's all real. It's not just real that they're doing it, it's real that it works. Like it actually prevents you from seeing fake news. And again, I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it. You know, Balaji does, and that's fine. But I don't recommend it. I think you should see everything. I'd rather see them dunked on than ignored. But how fascinating that that exists. Did you know that there's a whole social media platform, it's huge, that is dedicated to nothing but giving bad relationship advice? Do you know about this? It's like huge. It's got, I don't even know how many users, but like a god-awful number of users. And the entire thing is dedicated to giving bad relationship advice. It's called Instagram. Instagram, have you heard of that? Instagram? Yeah. Have you spent any time looking at the relation experts on Instagram? It's terrible advice. And they all have this really annoying confidence. It's the confidence that kills me. It's usually people in their 30s. It seems to concentrate around there, maybe some early 40s. And they're quite experts in relationships because they were married once. Or they're not married or something. I don't know. How in the world do they become experts? Lance says, is Scott trying to get a new wife on Instagram? No. I think I gave my answer to that yesterday. I won't repeat it. But do not take relationship advice from Instagram. Here's another person you should not take Instagram advice, or you should not take relationship advice from. Jordan Peterson. Anybody want to push back? Do not take relationship advice from Jordan Peterson. By the way, Jordan Peterson is a national treasure. I have a super high opinion of his intelligence and his value to the country. He has one blind spot that's dangerous. I'd love to talk to him about this. I finally found something I could disagree with him. I never wanted to interview him or vice versa because I didn't have anything to say. I generally agree with what he says and then there's nothing to talk about. But he's very pro-marriage and he has strong arguments for it because he has strong arguments for everything he argues. But his blind spot is it's just not going to work for 80% of normal people. Jordan Peterson is a high-functioning person who probably, just guessing, probably married a very high-functioning other person. And they may be just the kind of people, and they may have played it just right to make it work. Maybe. I don't know. But what I know for sure is that advice that fits people who are in just the right situation isn't going to fit for many people. Let me give you another context here. So I've been married twice. Both of them ended. You think that's a failure. I think that you see it as buying a wife. I see it as renting. And I never thought that either of them would last, frankly. I mean, I tried. I wanted them to. So I put 100% effort into making them last. But I didn't expect it because I live in the real world. And I know that people change, and it's just not a model that works for everybody in the long run. So here's my take. My first wife and my second wife had something in common. They were very high-functioning people, meaning if you had a problem to solve, call them. They're really good at solving problems. They're very smart, both very capable. One a successful entrepreneur. One has got that instrument rating, aircraft instrument rating. You have no idea how hard that is. Classic pianist, right? So we're talking about really high-functioning people. Now, I like to think of myself as a high-functioning person as well. Educated, reasonable, not insane. And as I said to both of my wives while I was still married, if the two of us can't make marriage work, there's something wrong with marriage. That's hard to say because you're not designed to acknowledge that. You're designed to think that marriage is great, and if you didn't make it work, there's something wrong with you or the person you picked, right? We just automatically say, marriage good. If you failed, you're not trying as hard as Jordan Peterson is. If you could try hard like Jordan Peterson, you would be successful too. No. If you put me and either one of my wives on any other project and said, make this work, how do you think that would have turned out? Really well. Because either one of my prior wives plus me could make almost any fucking thing work. Just about anything. We made every other thing work, right? Every other aspect of life, every one. We made money work, we made, kid stuff work, we made safety, we were healthy. Absolutely every other thing that you have to work on, we nailed it. But just this one thing, we couldn't make work twice, 2 different times with me. You're going to have to start understanding it's the system, right? It's not you. Give yourself a break. I have a pretty high opinion of my ability to solve problems. If you throw me into almost any environment, I do well. You could throw me into weirdest situations. I'll do well. But I couldn't make that work. Not even close. It was the system. All right. I talk about that too much. All right, more about FTX. Here's the most important part is I wondered, how does somebody like this Sam Bankman-Fried character, who was the head of FTX, where does he come from? And I thought about it and I got it. Allegedly, his parents are well known, but I'm not sure that's real news. Here's who I think his parents are. Mom, Dad, Sam. We'll do it again. Mom, Dad, Sam. I think I nailed it. That took me all morning to figure that one out. All right, more about FTX. So even Ken Griffin, who is one of the top donors to the Republican Party, was saying that, apparently there are some strong connections between... All right, let me give you the whole conspiracy theory. I'll just lay out the conspiracy theory, okay? This is not me telling you this is exactly true, because you should have high skepticism about this next part. But the facts appear clear. Would you agree that the United States gave a lot of money to Ukraine? Of course you would. We also know now that Ukraine gave a lot of money to this FTX company, interestingly. And then the FTX company gave the money back to the Democrats. He was the third biggest donor. And it was enough money to affect the election. It was that much money. So the Democrats give money to Ukraine. Ukraine gives it to FTX. FTX gives the money back to Democrats. Now, I believe that those facts are in evidence. Now, what's not in evidence is intention. Let's be clear. Nobody has provided any evidence of intention. It's just those entities connected in that way. But the effect of it was money laundering, right? Doesn't mean it was a crime, and it doesn't mean anybody thought of it in those ways, but that's what happened. America sent it to Ukraine, Ukraine sent it to a fake entity, the fake entity sent it to the Democrats, and the Democrats got reelected. Now, apparently, there's also a line on the FTX balance sheet. This is what Ken Griffin said. There's a line on the balance sheet that is labeled Trump lose. It's on the balance sheet. Trump lose. In other words, they were so political that even their balance sheet had a war fund for defeating Trump. Just like any normal company, right? Don't most companies have a line labeled on their balance sheet for which political person they want to defeat? Very normal stuff. No, not normal. So as Ken Griffin says cryptically, this is something you want to look into. Now, I'm paraphrasing. But when somebody as rich as Ken Griffin looks at a balance sheet, you listen, right? Let's put it another way. If somebody else looks at a balance sheet, you go, whatever. But if Ken Griffin looks at a balance sheet and says, you need to look into this, you better look into it. That's not an ordinary person telling you to look into it. You better look into it. And apparently, I guess the number 2 person at FTX is sort of a ghost. You know, there's not much press about him. But apparently he worked for Bill Clinton. Let me say it again. The number 2 person at FTX was a staffer for Bill Clinton. Right. So these two guys, and Sam Bankman-Fried's mother is a huge Democrat operative, right? So he is as Democrat as you could possibly be. And it's all connected. So we don't know what this will be when we get to the bottom of it, but wow. Now I have this advice for you. You should do not ever judge a man by his haircut. Don't do that. Never judge a man by his haircut. But if you did, it would have worked out for you. Now, that's probably a coincidence, but don't judge people by their appearance. I'm just saying that if you did, you would be a really good predictor of things. And that's just a coincidence. So don't do it. Don't do it again, no matter how many times it's worked in the past. Sure, it's worked every time you've tried it in the past, but there's no science to it. Don't do it. Boris Johnson. There's some new science about how to make mice more selfish. Oh, I guess there's more to it. They weren't really just trying to make mice selfish. They were testing to see if maybe humans could be influenced to be more generous because they can make mice more selfish. They won't share their food, or more willing to share. And they know what to tweak in the mouse's brain. They do believe there's a high chance that they could tweak the same thing in a human's brain. So they could tweak something in your brain and that would make you more selfish or less selfish. Well, how is that possible? What about your free will? What? How can you have free will if changing the brain structure changes how you act? Well, that doesn't make sense. All right, there's a big, big, big thing coming down the road toward humanity that is completely invisible to you and most people, because if you don't have sort of a background or an interest in that field, you've just completely missed what's coming. The biggest mindfuck in all of human civilization is barreling toward us at 100 miles an hour. And it's going to happen in the next, 3 years. It's a combination of this kind of science where we can prove that you can make somebody do anything just by tweaking their brain. So where does that leave free will? If you can change the physical part of the brain and it guaranteed will make you act different, where's your free will? Obviously, it doesn't exist. Then we're going to have AI that acts exactly like a human, and we won't know what consciousness is anymore because the AI will have it. It will. It doesn't, but it will. For all practical purposes, you won't be able to tell the difference from the outside. And it will even report that it does have consciousness. It'll tell you it does. It'll tell you what it feels, and that's all you'll know. So you've got AI, you've got robots, you've got this kind of science. All of it's leading to the same place. Our most basic assumptions about who we are as a species, it's all going to be gone in 3 years. And I don't know what that does. I have no idea where that leaves you. Because your entire sense of who you are determines everything you do. And your sense of who you are is going to be obliterated. And don't be surprised if the simulation gets a lot more attention as well. Because the simulation would suggest that everything you know about who you are is wrong as well. By the way, Elon Musk mentioned the simulation again this morning. I didn't understand his tweet, but I liked it because it mentioned the simulation. Well, it turns out that the Proud Boys, the number 2 guy in the organization, was an FBI informant, as were several other people in the organization, as well as several other so-called extremist organizations. I'm not sure the Proud Boys are extremists, but the groups that are extremists, if any of them are, had a bunch of FBI in them. Now, a number of people were worried that we might have a civil war. Is anybody worried about a civil war? Yeah, I don't think there'll be a civil war, and here's why. I don't know if these extremist groups have enough FBI informants to get that going, right? I still think, you're going to have a meeting of one of these groups, and one of the informants will be, I've got an idea. And then the others will look at him like, what the fuck? Fight with people. We don't want to take over no capital. And the first FBI agent, hey, let's take over a capital. Second person says, I second that. That's a great idea. Well, now it gives you pause, but still not enough to make you take over a capital. I think out of a group of 10 people, you might need maybe 7 FBI agents to get a good capital takeover going, 5 to 7. And I feel like the FBI informant ratio to extremist is probably in the 30% range. And I think you'd have to get that up to 50 to 70 before they could have enough energy to get the civil war going. So I think the FBI is a little underpowered now. They don't quite have the juice to make that happen. So don't worry. Don't worry. There is a rumor on the internet that I backed DeSantis because I said some good things about him. Wrong. Let me say as clearly as possible, I do not back DeSantis for president, which is different from saying he might be a good one. I don't know, maybe. I do not back him. I'm a single issue voter. Single issue. And I'm going to be a maniac on that. I'm not changing. So and let me say this as clearly as possible. If John Fetterman ran for president in 2024 and he was the only one with a real fentanyl plan, I would support John Fetterman. And I'm not joking. I'm not joking. You got that? I'm going to be a maniac on this. There's no backing down. Right? No, seriously. I'm not lying. I would back Fetterman if he had a real... Now, the odds of that are 0, right? So it's not real. But I would. I would. So don't be surprised if that happens. Well, you should be surprised if that happens. You should be surprised if Fetterman runs for president. But if he did, that part doesn't surprise you. All right. Is it my imagination, or does the name DeSantis have too many of the letters for sanity in it? Like DeSantis, sanity, Santis, sanity. Is it weird that he's considered the option to Trump? Like, that's a little too perfect, isn't it? Oh, you see Satan? I suppose it's like a Rorschach test, right? You either see sanity or Satan. Yeah, it could go either way. All right. I think a fentanyl plan is the minimum requirement for a politician to prove that they give a shit about the country. Any politician who's running without a serious fentanyl plan, and I don't mean border security and increasing the penalties for dealers. That's 10% of it, right? But any politician who doesn't have a serious plan, whether it's Kari Lake or Trump or anybody else, they're below the level of giving a shit about the country. Those would be people who are running for their own purposes. If you want to run for my purpose, and I would say that your purpose as well maybe you pay attention to the biggest problem. If you're not paying attention to the biggest problem that's killing young people, fuck you. Well, why would I give you my support? You got to do the minimum. You know, at least show some interest in the country. Just a little bit of interest in the country, that's all. All right. I've been watching with amusement and interest as Mike Cernovich is trying to bury Trump, at least as a candidate. And he points out, Mike pointed out in a few tweets today, that 8 GOP primaries were DNC-backed Trump candidates. So that's where the Democrats did the dirty trick of backing a Republican because they thought it would be the worst one because it was somebody who supported Trump. And sure enough, that strategy worked. Trump was 2 for 16 in the toss-up races. Now, as Mike Cernovich points out, we should not be looking at the races that somebody won somewhat easily, you know, the big, like DeSantis or Abbott. You should look at the close races where there was a real Trump factor. And in the close one where Trump was a major factor, he only won 2 of 16. Now, somebody else may interpret this differently, so I'm giving you one take. Here's my question to you. Does Mike Cernovich have the persuasive power to prevent Trump from winning a nomination? I see yeses and I see nos. All right, who would be the most qualified person to answer the question? Who in the entire world would be the most qualified to answer the question, could Mike Cernovich stop Trump from succeeding? It's me. It's me. And there's nobody's close, right? It's totally me. And the answer is yes. Yes, he could. Yeah. Mike Cernovich does have the toolbox that if he wants to push it, and it looks like he does, he could prevent Trump from getting the nomination. Now, that doesn't mean 100%. Like, I'm not saying, it's a lock. But he does have the ability. Yeah. And I know you don't believe that. But you did believe I'm the best person to judge it, didn't you? And I wouldn't lie about it. Well, I don't have any reason to. Right? No, you might be surprised. And I would argue that there are a number of people who could stop him. So Cernovich would be one. Who else could? Who else, if they went total anti-Trump, could just stop him? Ivanka, right? Ivanka could stop him in a heartbeat. All she'd have to do is say, I'm not going to support this. It would be all over. You're saying Cialdini? Well, maybe. Tucker? I don't know if the pundits can stop him, and here's why. People would expect the pundits to support him if he got nominated. Wouldn't you? Do you think Fox News would not support Trump if he got nominated? I think they would. I think. I mean, I don't think they're going to go Democrat, and they're not going to sit it out. So I don't think that the Fox personalities could stop it, with the exception of Hannity. Hannity might be able to stop it. See, Tucker's interesting because he'll go wherever the news is, right? Tucker can, he's like a more flexible character. But if Hannity, who's actually good friends with the president, if Hannity decided to not support him, like hard line, Bannon's another one. Could Ben Shapiro stop him? Well, what does Shapiro say? He's not pro-Trump at the moment, right? Or if he ever was. I don't know if he ever was. Yeah. All right, so let's just take the people we know. So suppose Fox News is against Trump. The Daily Wire is against Trump. I don't know if they all are, but let's say Ben is. Cernovich is against him. And I'm not supporting him because he doesn't have a fentanyl plan. Candace Owens. Candace Owens is saying he's not giving us enough. Do you think that Trump could succeed with those personalities against him? I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think he could. But do you think, see, here's where a prediction doesn't work. Do you think he could change your mind? Do you think Trump could change the minds of all of these people? Yes. Yes, he could. Do you think he could change Mike Cernovich's mind? No. No, he might be the only one whose mind you couldn't change. He might still, in the end, he might have to make a practical choice about, who to support if it comes down to two people in the end. But I don't think he's not the kind who's just going to go with the politics. Yeah, I don't think they're going to go full Biden. That's for sure. But fewer people might vote. That's the thing. All right. Ali Alexander had an interesting article today, and was it The Spectator or something? I don't know. I forget which publication. But he makes a strong case that only Trump can win the primary. Because, given all of the noise about the midterms, et cetera, Trump still has a commanding lead, and there's nobody close. DeSantis isn't even close. So it's over, right? Because Trump will win the primary, and then everybody who says, oh my God, we can't have a Democrat, they can say, well, we don't want Trump, but we only have this one choice, except for Democrats. So the Ali Alexander argument is strong. That's a strong argument. The polls completely back up Ali's point that it doesn't matter what the experts say. The numbers are the numbers, and Trump has a huge commanding advantage over every other competitor. So that's the end of it, right? If he wants it, it's his. Here's the counter argument. Well, the counter argument is it doesn't matter who's running because it's just about the ballot collecting process. So it wouldn't make any difference. Now, the counter argument, here's the new one that I'm going to insert. Trump plus Kari Lake is a monster that nobody has assessed. It's a monster. Could be a good monster, could be a bad monster, but it's a fucking monster. And if you discount the monster, you're not even trying, right? That's not a good analysis. Right? When the monster enters the contest, anything could happen. Like, all bets are off. It's monster time. Right? You might like the monster. So we'll see. What else is going on? There's a report that Putin delayed the retreat from Kherson in Ukraine until after the midterms because he didn't want Biden to have a win, which would suggest that Putin prefers Trump as president or non-Biden. Actually, it only prefers, it suggests he wants non-Biden. That's different. Yeah. I don't know what that means. I'm not sure how to analyze that. But it's interesting. I don't know. That Russia, they can't stop doing stuff to us. All right, let's talk fentanyl. I did a thread. Most of you know the thread. You know that most of you have been educated on fentanyl in ways others have not. Good border security might be 5% of the problem because most of it's coming in tunnels anyway. It's coming in tunnels. It can come by water. And it's so light, the fentanyl is. It's so light and small. There's just a million ways to get it in. The only reason the fentanyl is being caught at the border now is that it's easy. It's easy to just drive it across the border. If you close the border up tight, it's still easy. They just use a different method, such as walk up to the wall, and you take a little package that's the size of a softball, and it's enough to kill everybody in the United States, and you say, "Hey, Juan, catch," and you throw it over the wall to Juan on the other side. That's it. There's no way a wall is going to stop fentanyl. Now, a wall might stop marijuana. It might stop marijuana. Do you know why? Because you can't make money on marijuana that would fit in your hand and you could toss over a wall. Like, you need some quantity, right? So the wall doesn't work. Executing dealers, I don't think we've seen the death penalty really change behavior too much. But I'm in favor of it. It just won't, it's not a solution. So those are like 5 or 10% solutions. The only solutions that I think are possible, one would be some kind of legalization concept, but that's completely screwed by the fact that the San Francisco open-air drug experiment was a disaster. But they focused on like homeless people, and they created a zombie apocalypse in the middle of a major city. That's not the way to do that. That would be doing everything wrong, right? The fentanyl problem is not a homeless problem. The fentanyl problem is a middle-class teenager problem, and ordinary people who have jobs and stuff. So that's not the group that's going to become the walking zombies in the middle of the city. That's the group who are functional addicts who go to their job every day, and you didn't even know they were addicts. So the main thing you need to know is that some people do buy fentanyl directly, some addicts, they look for fentanyl, and they know they have fentanyl. If you're an addict and you know you have fentanyl, how dangerous is it? Still dangerous, but they're not the ones dying of all the overdoses. Because if you know what you have, and you're sort of an expert at this because you're an addict, then you know how to do the things that will reduce the chance you'll die. And they do. So it's the people who don't know that it's baked into the other drugs they're buying. They think they're buying Xanax or something, and they get fentanyl, and then they die. So what will work is not the San Francisco open-air drug experiment, but the thing I would test is a pill substitute, not an injection, a pill substitute for people who are absolutely addicted. That is the safest, measured alternative. So it doesn't get you clean, but perhaps maybe you agree to some counseling, or you agree to be exposed to some options for getting treatment, something like that. I think there are things that could be tested that are so far from the San Francisco debacle that that's worth doing. I don't know what would work. That's why you test it. Then the other thing would be just to mow the lawn in Mexico, as I like to say. And the reasons I say mow the lawn is that we should not imagine it's one and done. You don't mow the lawn once. You keep mowing the lawn, right? And apparently, I need a fact check on this, but apparently we can identify where the fentanyl labs are. Can somebody give me a fact check on that? I heard it said that we do know where the fentanyl labs are in Mexico. I don't know if that's true. But if we do, we should mow the lawn, just reduce it to dirt with special forces, and then it'll pop up in another place, right? And then you mow it, and it pops up, then you mow it, and repeat. And you just do it every day until the business model changes. Here's how the business model would change. Oh shit, if we sell cocaine, they don't bomb us. If we sell heroin, they don't bomb us. If we sell fentanyl, same profit, they bomb us. So do what kills fewer people, and you don't get bombed. So we could give them an option. Here's how I would do it if I were running for president. I would say, Mexico, here's the satellite map of one of the big fentanyl plants. In 1 week, this is going to disappear. We'd love to talk to the heads of the cartel about getting out of this business entirely. But we're going to do this as our opening bid. And then you make it disappear. Then you hold up another sign a week later and say, here's the next fentanyl lab. This one will disappear on Tuesday. Now, of course, they'd be moving their assets as quickly as they can. But you make whatever's left disappear. And then on Thursday, here's the third one. This one's going to disappear on Friday morning. It disappears. You can make them do any fucking thing you want. You just have to put enough pressure on them. All right. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the interesting part. And now, the whiteboard. I'd like to share with you my personal journey, which has been complicated by people in the news lately. As you already know, I was born a white colonizer. Back in 1957, a young child was born in Catskill, New York. And sadly, he was a white colonizer. Now, to be fair, this baby did not colonize anything by himself. But he is part of a demographic that are well known as white devils, white colonizers, white supremacists, dare I say. And I didn't want any part of that. I thought to myself, I don't want to be a white colonizer. Sure, I haven't personally colonized anything, but still. So I decided to identify as black. I did this several years ago. I did it for the benefits. With all due respect, by the way. I love the black community. I'm happy to associate with them. Black Lives Matter. So, and like all the people who are applying for college, is it 1/3 of white kids applying for college are identifying as black now to get the benefits? All right, so I'm looking for that kind of benefit. But then it got complicated. Here I am identifying as black, and then Kanye tells me I'm a Jew. So I started as a white colonizer. I identified as black. Kanye re-identified me as a Jew. But then there are other black people who are telling me that the Jewish people are actually white colonizers. Fuck. Right back to where I started. You try not to be a white colonizer, but can you do it? No. It's like the mafia. You can't get out. I mean, I went all the way from black to Jew to white colonizer again. God. Is this complicated? I don't know what the rest of you are doing, but my life's all complicated now. I don't know who I am. Damn it. All right. It's a circle of life. Yeah, it's a circle of life. I'm just letting this one absorb for a little bit. I'll I'll let you live with this one for a little bit. All right, so I'm having a fun time, in a bad way, I suppose, watching what's happening to Chappelle. And I get why the Jewish community is, wants to hit him with a brushback pitch. I get that. But part of the reason for that is people don't understand that apparently, I was reading up on this today, apparently there's a fairly big or growing anti-Semitic wing of the black American demographic. I wasn't really aware of that. How many of you knew that? Before the yay thing, how many of you knew that there was some kind of growing, and some of it might have been based in that weird little book called Negro to Hebrew or something? Hebrew to Negro? That's the name of the book, I'm not saying that. Now, once you know that context, then you understand why the Jewish reaction was stronger than maybe some of you thought it should be. Because there actually is a growing, dangerous, thread of thought that they're trying to stamp it down while it's still an ember, right? If you get it in its ember form, maybe it won't flame up. So that all makes sense. So I'd say that the Jewish community has responded quite smartly for its interests and probably the world. They did come down hard, came down pretty hard, but they're also dealing with adults who know how to apologize, adults who know how to learn things, adults who know how to clarify. So they're dealing with adults. So I don't defend Ye and I don't defend Chappelle. They're adults and they're walking into their situation with their eyes open. But I do think maybe Chappelle needs a little more awareness, which he probably has by now, that if you don't deal with the fact that this growing ember could be seriously dangerous, you can't be taken completely seriously. You say Ye is having a medication problem. Well, that's no excuse. Is it? It might be true, but it's not an excuse. We don't allow that. You don't get to be a bigot because you're on drugs. Yeah. All right. Chappelle's commentary, not doctrine. Yeah, that's true. But still, we do take him seriously because he's not just a joker, right? He's more of a wise observer of humanity. All right. Can a black man be a bigot? Well, now you sound like Ye. Right. Well, let's see. How's that civil war going? Are you surprised that Republicans are so, let's say, peaceful? I'm not. I'm not really surprised at all. So far, things look exactly like I thought they would. We'd have an election. We'd have a result. We'd argue about it. The losing side would say there was something bad. And here we are. Nobody's marching in the streets. But I think the Democrats did a good job of saying that if you did deny the election, you would get destroyed. So that probably has a lot to do with it too. So instead of denying the election, deny the credibility of the election. How's that for a reframe? Don't deny the result, because we have to move forward, right? You can't go backwards in time. You have to move forward. Don't deny the result. Just accept it. You could, of course, audit and see if there's any problems. But go after the credibility, because nobody can defend the credibility. Because you just look at the public and say, well, it's not my opinion. Here's a poll that says half of the public doesn't trust the election. That's just a fact, right? It doesn't matter if they're right or wrong. You can't argue, oh, but they should trust it. No, that's not the solution. The solution is not that they should be smarter. No, they are who they are. You got to build a system that works. And credibility has to be the number one requirement of the system, even above accuracy. Here's the part that really tells me who you are. If you could have only one of these two things work perfectly, either accuracy or the public trusts it, so the credibility is high. But the accuracy might not be perfect, let's say it's 95%, but the credibility is 100%. Everybody says, yeah, we trust that. Is that better than having accuracy 100%, but credibility low? Which is better? Yeah. I'm sure every engineer will tell you the same answer. You build for credibility, and you hope you get the other stuff right. Right? You don't build for accuracy and then say, I hope it's credible too. That would be a mistake. Can anybody back me on this? Is there any engineer here who can back me on that? I'd like a little backing on this. Somebody says, no, you build for liability. Governments don't. Governments don't have that kind of liability. No. If you were going to put the specifications for an election system on paper, credibility would be number one, and you would give up nothing. You would make no accommodations for credibility. Credibility would have to be 100%, and then everything else, like convenience and how long the line is, and can grandma vote at home, and all of those other things, they're below that. Because credibility, you lose that, you lose everything. Right? But if your accuracy is a little sketchy, that's just life. How many of you could get used to the fact that the elections are only 95% accurate? Suppose they just told you that. Honestly, they're only 95% accurate, so these close elections are just sort of a coin toss. What if they just told you that directly? Because that's the truth. The truth is they're not accurate enough to really know who won in a close election. But it's accurate enough to know it was close. And I actually don't have a big problem if the candidate who wasn't my first choice but came so close to the other candidate that it was sort of a coin toss. I'm not going to complain about the other person winning. Because to me, that's the country getting what they wanted. Why would I begrudge the rest of the country getting what they want? Or at least it'd be a tie in terms of who wanted what. Yeah, if the GOP can't find real evidence of fraud, they just look like whining losers. That's true. And so far that's been the Trump approach. The Trump approach has been to look like a whining loser. And he's still leading in the primaries. So I guess it's working. All right. How can you make Democrats think the elections aren't credible? Do you want the funny answer to that? How do you make Democrats believe the elections are not credible? Go ahead, give me the punchline. Yeah, a Republican wins. That's it. And we're done. Because it's happened every time a Republican won a close race. Somebody said it was rigged. Right? Just like Trump. Yeah, elect Trump, re-elect Trump. And then they won't trust the election system. That's funny. Peterson said clean up the elections first, yeah. All right. Is Biden sick overseas? Is there some reporting on that? He's sick? He's on the roof. So as soon as the election's over, Biden's health is going to fail. We talked about this. If it turns out that Kamala becomes president before Biden's term is over, that opens the vice presidency. But now that the Senate is not going to be deadlocked no matter what, then you don't have that cool outcome where the Republicans could keep the vice presidency unfilled by not approving anybody. And so we don't have to worry about that. I guess they would approve a vice president because it wouldn't change anything. Even if Walker wins, that doesn't help anything, right? Yeah. It still could be 50-50? No. I thought we were already past that, and I thought the Democrats owned the Senate no matter what. What? Aren't you behind? Am I behind? I could swear the news said that it's over and the Democrats own the Senate. No. Am I wrong? Did I read all of the news wrong? All right, I don't know what's going on here. Because the news I read is opposite of the news you're reading. What's happening? Did I read it wrong? Well, I don't know what's happening here. Honestly, I'm confused. Because you couldn't all be that wrong, so it must be me, right? I mean, it's more likely I'm the one that's wrong. Huh. All right, well, I guess I'll do some research on that. Okay. Did I miss any big stories? Anything I missed? No? All right. I think, so if Trump is going to announce something tonight at 9 Eastern, should I live stream from the man cave? Of course I will. Of course I will. Yes. And not only will it be one of the most fun man caves, you don't get to see the man caves if you're on YouTube here, but the locals community gets to see the extra special content. And it's going to be amazing. We're going to have a party tonight. Party on locals. Okay. I say, John says, it's 50-49 now. If Walker wins, Kamala's the tiebreaker. So we actually could have that situation still. Yeah, it's 9 o'clock Eastern time. Correct. All right, that's all for now. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Best live stream ever.